like to introduce myself again. I'm Sardana Khan from Central Queensland University School of Business and Law. I'm working as a lecturer here. So good afternoon to everyone. I will be addressing the first paper now, but both of the paper are related to one unit, which I coordinated as a unit coordinator in 2018 and 19, so for 4 semesters. So I'll give you some background first, but let me share my screen for the first paper. Okay, so sorry. I'll have to time myself as well, so let me start. So my first paper is on the importance of personalized, formative, and summative assessment feedback for independent study unit. So the unit I'm going to talk about is a capstone master's level independent, partially independent study unit, which was designed as a unique unit where students will come up with their own research project based on industry issue or problem. And each of the assessment would build on the previous assessment's feedback. So basically, for this unique capstone level, master's level capstone unit called professional project, students were finding it very difficult to understand the concept of the unit and deliver the project according to the standards that we expected. So basically, the feedback from the marker from different campuses was very important for their success in this unit. So in this unit, they used to have 6 lecture tudes instead of 12. They still have that because it is partially independent study unit. And they used to meet their lecturer or instructor on campus every fortnight instead of every week. So that was the format of the unit. Now, the markers feedback on assessment 1, step 1, there are 2 assessments. One is the proposal. The second assessment was actually the report, final report. So the proposal one was divided into 2 assessments, and that is step 1 and step 2. Step 1 only had 15% of the marks, and it was a 1-page short proposal with just the research question, the problem statement, and basically what secondary data link, publicly available data link they will use to do their research and then solve that problem in the final report, which is assessment 2. But in assessment 1, step 2, they would have to provide a full proposal, which was 25% of their marks. So altogether, they had 60% evaluation left for the last assessment, that is the final report, which was based on the success of the proposal or feedback of the proposal, basically. So if they don't understand the feedback, or if the feedback is not useful, then they would have very little chance of doing well in the last and most important evaluation. So this was the situation we were in, and this unit was marked as a problem unit for a very long time. The standard was something students could not actually, perform at. So 25%, and even in some cases, 30% students would fail in this unit traditionally. And that made this unit very unpopular in the sense that they were very scared of it in many ways. So that's when I took, when I was assigned as the unit coordinator of this unit in 2018, I found out from my early moderation of assessment 1, step 1, that the feedback provided to the student was not very personalized, not very specific, and in many cases not very useful to improve their understanding of the assessment in the next one. So here you can see that I have identified 3 challenges. That is the challenge with personalized feedback, timely feedback, and useful feedback. So interestingly, these solutions for each of these problems could be counterproductive or contradictory in terms of processes and outcomes. For example, a customized and useful feedback can compromise the feedback return date. and put the students at a disadvantage. Moreover, the markers get only 10 minutes to mark the first assessment, that is one-page proposal, which basically should be the most extensive and clear instruction for the students to develop the second proposal, that is the full proposal, assessment 1, step 2. Therefore, I had to be extra vigilant to ensure accurate, timely, and useful feedback from 8 different markers in 3 different campuses. So I was asking myself if I can be the unicorn that everybody loves. Obviously, the markers have very little time to provide them useful feedback, whereas our students do depend on it for their success in this unit. So the answer was both yes and no. I cannot be popular to everyone, obviously, but I do have to make sure that we work within these limited resources. But I would like to let you know that for these 3 assessments of different word limit, etc., we do have 1 hour for each of the students for the markers. So subsequently, they could actually use lesser amount of time to assess this evaluation, because if the student have good feedback in the initial one, they could actually do better, and you don't have much requirement to provide a detailed feedback if they have already followed the formative feedback well. But anyway, it was still a big challenge to have everybody on board. But when I first started moderating, I found that some very generic comment was made at the end of these first level assessment, that is assessment 1, step 1. For example, this one: your data source is not acceptable and will not lead to a viable research. Your research questions are vague. Formatting, grammar errors, referencing, and citation issues are visible. And now, some of the feedback I moderated was not very useful, not very specific, and not even accurate. But this one was accurate. All right, so it actually describes what was mainly wrong with this assessment. So I'm just giving you the summative feedback in the feedback studio. I'm not going through the in-text comments, but I can guarantee you that in-text comment didn't give any more detail than that. It just pointed out where the problem lies, but it didn't give any kind of suggestion or formative feedback. So what I did is, when I was moderating it, I provided a comment. Now, I used pseudonym for all of the students to de-identify, obviously, here. So let's say this student was Tony. So when I gave the comment or suggested the marker to comment like this, you can see that I started with addressing the student, of course. Dear Tony, thank you for submitting assessment. So whatever he or she did right, I just provided that first. And then each of these heading, like data source, which marker already identified data source is not acceptable, but that was not a very useful information for the student. So why this data source is not useful? I have provided this comment because we have very specific information about using publicly available secondary sources, etc. And so I have said to that person why this is not very useful. Apart from that part, this data source will not lead to the solution this student will probably seek. So these things were explained to the student. And then research question. So when I said your research question is placing, why your research question is not right and why is it not answerable, or is a good research or specific research question, that was not explained by the marker, not in the in-text comment and not in the summative comment either. And the other parts were pretty generic and there were some specific information in the text, so I didn't elaborate too much on it, but there are some referencing literature issues, etc. But the marker pointed it out in the appropriate points, so that was okay. Now, the other part I also suggested is to make it useful. So how or where the student will find resources to improve their next assessment. This was particularly written over here. Now, if you think about it, if you have to mark this student, even though it's a one-page proposal, but you have to give so much comment, obviously this is not going to be a popular concept to the marker. Now, if you look at this part of the comment, that is the useful part, the suggestions to improve the quality of assessment 1.2, that is generally pretty similar to all students who has made the similar mistake. All right, so because the resources are in the same place, etc. So you can just copy paste it and delete the comments which doesn't apply to this student. So I provided those quick mark and also the summative examples of summative comment with all possible suggestions so that it makes the marker's life a bit easier. Now, the next thing I will show you is why there is a big difference between this generic comment I provided you before, although it was an accurate comment, and why this one, like personalized and useful comment, is much more better. And here is some of the differences. Now, if you see here, the comment I provided or suggested is obviously personalized because it addresses the student as a person or individual rather than a generic comment where student may feel like it is copy pasted for every student. So and we're not addressing them as a cohort. So the first line is also a positive goodwill statement. Many students do many good things. So it is good to encourage them with a positive statement first. The comments are addressing and explaining each issue distinctly and specifically so that student, by reading a long comment, doesn't get lost in, which part is about which part, like data or research question is separately headed, all right, or bold-faced. So next issue was the comments are not only indicative of what major issues were there, but also very formative. That means explaining those issues, of course, but also suggesting how to overcome them. So we are not giving them the solution. They will have to find their own solution because it's independent study unit. They will have to be able to explain the interpretation, but we still can give them some suggestions about how to approach those problems. So the UC comment, that is the comment I suggested, are pointing at the specific resources and support system available in the Moodle, because sometimes students just cannot identify it if you have too many resources or too many weeks have already passed, etc. So this could identify those resources particularly, and they can quickly go there and find it. At the end, there is again a goodwill statement for the student, which makes them with the marker or reviewer's name. So if you know who exactly is marking you, although they have their instructor on campus, it is still showing a friendly and approachable way to instruct them about it. So basically, the marker also can say, end with such a statement that you can approach me next class or whatever about more explanation, etc. So it's a friendly way to end the comment. Now, the next thing is, like, obviously it is much better way to provide feedback because it's personalized, useful, and it is also quite specific. But the question is, how do you make everybody come on board with you? So when I first address it, obvious thing from the markers is that we don't have that much time to go into that specific detail. So the question was whether I will settle for just an accurate comment or do I actually push this agenda I have in mind for better evaluation and better success rate of the students. So first thing I used is the change management approach, of course. So starting with leadership and change management. So gaining support was the most important issue. So first of all, I tried to create the sense of urgency by providing them evidence that students are doing badly, and then they have 20 different emails at the end of the semester complaining about that marker or asking for more explanations. So you have to give that explanation anyway, eventually. So why not give it first? And the next thing is discussing the alternative solutions. Like, how can we make it easy for all of us, but still make it effective? So we found many useful suggestions from the markers to make it useful. Like, for example, me giving them quick marks, better quick marks, or providing them alternative summative comments, which based on our experience of what are the major issues usually. And train, equip, and support them. Obviously, I provided them all those quick marks and generic comments, but they can just customize by putting the student's name and deleting the parts that are not applicable to the students. And the last one is reinforce and acknowledge the contribution. So when they actually mark the student in the next assessment, I definitely appreciated them during the moderation process personally, and in the meeting as well, I acknowledged those who implemented it properly. And also when it comes for recommendation for campus lead, etc., those who have used it properly, they obviously got very good recommendation. And I even sent email to them expressing my gratitude. So the other thing is address the structural issues, because it's not all about marking and providing feedback. It's also about some structural issues, because if you, as I said, this particular unit had only 6 lecture and tute instead of 12 lecture tute, like a regular unit, which students are not used to. Now, because it's a partially independent study unit, we can't make it 12 lecture and tute. But instead of meeting the students every fortnight, I recommended the school that you should break out or decouple the lecture and tute. So each week they get to meet their instructor with their problem and keep in touch with their progress. So basically, before the assessment happens, they can get some early feedback every week, not every fortnight, by meeting their instructors. So we did that, and that has actually improved our evaluation and performance of the students greatly. The other thing was about incorporating flexibility in delivery mode and time when possible, and pay special attention to special cases where appropriate without compromising the equity across the students. So basically, I, as a unit coordinator, I used phone conversation or drop-in time, extra drop-in time for all students across the campus. If they cannot reach their, regular instructor, they can always come to me for help. So all of these things were, working together to improve the performance of this unit. The last one is addressing the climate context, attitude, and emotions that worked against an effective feedback, like lack of trust, or because students used to come to me with complaints that the marker actually didn't mark them properly because they didn't trust the marker, because they didn't have that conversation. They had very generic comments, so they thought that it was just copy pasted from everywhere else. It doesn't reflect comment on their particular assessment. So when they saw that the marker has given really detailed and very specific customized comment, they actually started respecting their authority on the subject and also the thoroughness of their marking. And obviously, if somebody has lack of commitment, and I must say that out of my 8 marker, one of them, I later had to say that I can't work with this person because I didn't see the ethical commitment on his part. As I said, that some of the comments were not even accurate. The one I used as an example was accurate, actually. So building trust is very important with the student. So I think you need to earn that trust as well through the comment you provide and feedback you provide. Structural and psychological empowerment is also important among the markers, because many of them came to me with many different challenges and recommendation, which I welcome with open arm. So the trust among the team members and also sharing the knowledge is very important as well. So I have just 1 minute left for my own presentation, so I'm giving myself a warning. Now, this is my last slide, and this is about the improvement we have observed in different feedback. So as you can see, before I took over the unit, this was the performance in 2017. So it was a bit of troubled, in a troubled situation. But then when I took over in 2018, the first one was not so bad, but as gradually you go down, in T2, term 2, 2019, the fail rate or success rate of the unit has gone much better. That means only 6% students failed, whereas initially it was even 20% in some cases, 19-20%. So you can also see the overall satisfaction rate has gradually improved in all criteria, basically. So this was a very good example of how gradually improving our personalized feedback, our level of personalization, and also other things, structural things as well, and the teamwork has improved the performance of this unit. And this unit has received the best evaluation, one of the award, gold certificate from the school in 2019. And all the team members were really happy because everybody's name was on that certificate. So thank you very much. And I will stop the first presentation now and start the next one. So I have done it within time as well. So congratulations to me. So let's start the second one. I hope many of you have left some comments in the chat room. We will address them. Let me just open the next one.